Good morning. Good morning. Hey, bear with me. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton. We're in our open and welcoming community. We live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors this morning. We're really glad you're here, and we invite you to stop by our welcome table after worship in Robinson Lounge so that we can answer your questions and get to know you a little bit. Again, welcome to our congregation. We're very happy you've joined us. So we have a couple announcements this morning. Our Sanctuary and Refugee Welcoming Ministry is holding a brunch on June 25th, a couple weeks from now, right after the service, to raise funds for our Afghan family and raise funding for their relatives in Afghanistan struggling with food costs. Please mark your calendars for this brunch and be sure to join us. If you would like to help or contribute to the food, we'll be posting a Sign Up Genius. The ministry will be posting the Sign Up Genius, so keep an eye out for that. And as you can see, happy Pride Month. So we're having our yearly Pride service this morning, supported by UUCP Rainbow Ministry, but also next Saturday here in Princeton will be the third Princeton Pride. On June 17th, the third annual parade will be marching down Witherspoon Street and gathering for a party and a fair next to the Princeton YWCA on Paul Robeson Place. All are welcome to walk with the congregation's Rainbow Ministry group behind our banner, representing UUCP in our pride and advocacy for the LGBTAQIA community. You can join up with the UUCP marchers at 10:30 a.m. next Saturday in the municipal driveway closest to the church, or stop by our Rainbow Ministry booth at the Pride Fair between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. And now our chalice lighting.
There is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it. If only we are brave enough to be it. Amanda Gorman, whose inauguration poem, The Hill We Climb, was recently removed from the shelves of the Bob Graham Education Center in Miami Lakes, Florida.
Good morning. As we ponder these joys and sorrows, we can note that today and this month, we are celebrating Pride, the pride of claiming one's identity, and especially lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and all the ways that people name their sexual orientation and gender identity. We will hear later of some severe challenges to accessing information about one's identity. And that challenge, unfortunately, falls often in school libraries. So I'm thinking of children and of youth who meet barriers in claiming their identity, whether it's their identity as LGBTQ or a person of color, or a person of atypical mental or physical capabilities, or any other marginalization. In answer to a question to a parent about what gift would you most love to give to your child or your children, I heard this: I want them to have every help possible to see that they are enough, to know that they are capable, to know that they can use all the talents that they possess and that their talents are vast. I am not a parent by way of giving birth, and my children are my students and all the persons I have mentored in my life. But still, I share with all persons who are parenting and helping that their children can access every kind of affirmation to become who they are. And so I want to share this piece of poetry, which I have a feeling that many of you will know. It's by Khalil Gibran on children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters and non-binary offspring of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but they are not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the place of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You can strive to be like them, but you cannot make them just like you. For there is no going backward, no tarrying with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. With these words, I pray that my life be one of affirmation of others, and that we all have the wisdom to see that our loving support for our children and all with whom we share space on this planet can move, and that this brings us to the beloved community.
My own experience with books and reading as a child was a little fraught. My mother had dyslexia and other learning disabilities that had made it very hard for her to learn how to read, and reading remained difficult for her into adulthood. As a result, there were few books and certainly nothing that one would call children's literature in my house when I was a young child, and my mom did not read to me. However, I had a best friend whose mom was a kindergarten teacher and who occasionally read us a story. One of those stories had a lasting impact. My best friend and I had the same name, and we were known in the neighborhood as Big Linda and Little Linda. One day, when we Lindas were about 4 years old, Big Linda's mom, Mrs. Napick, sat us down on the sofa with a book. It was a beautifully illustrated story of the tortoise and the hare. In the contrast presented in the opening pages by the tall, fast, springy hare and the short, slow, plodding tortoise, I identified with the tortoise, and I felt bad for him. Even at that young age, my small stature was an integral part of my identity. Not only did everyone call me Little Linda, but all the kids on the block were forever running around, racing and competing in physical ways. I loved to run and hop and jump too, but I never won any kind of race, never came close, and often had trouble keeping up. I listened to the story of the tortoise and the hare for that very first time, holding my breath and figuring that the poor tortoise was bound to lose. Suddenly, when Mrs. Napick turned on to the last page, I saw a picture of the tortoise crossing the finish line with the hare scrambling to catch up. He was too late. My eyes widened and my ears perked up as Mrs. Napick then read the final words. Slow and steady wins the race. I was surprised and amazed by this turn of events, and I giggled. Of course, the intended message of the tortoise and the hare is about the folly of hubris, about thinking that you're better than you are. It is meant to bring down a notch those who are a little too big for their britches. Who might have guessed that a little tiny girl who never was too big for anything might find solace in it? I couldn't read the words myself, but the images I saw on the page and the significance of the story seared themselves into my brain. They gave me confidence. I learned that being big and fast were not the only avenues to winning. All kinds of books and stories help children to build their own sense of themselves and the world around them. We cannot know which single book might speak to a child at a particular moment in time. In the context of the recent efforts some are making to take books they don't like off the shelves for everyone, I am deeply grateful to librarians everywhere who are standing up for all of our children by opposing such censorship. The banning of any books, even ones that we may not understand completely ourselves, reduces the chance that that single book will find its way into the hands or the ears of a child who needs it. My early encounter with The Tortoise and the Hare was coincidental and serendipitous, and yet that single story changed me a little for the better. It is not a story about gender identity, about sexual orientation, or about race, and it is not likely to make its way onto anyone's banned list, let's hope. But my experience with it is an example of how one single book can make a difference in a child's life. It was my queer story.
Wow. First of all, I would like to say really, really thank you so much for the Rainbow Ministry members for, pulling this whole thing together. Second thing I want to say is I'd like to draw your attention to this wonderful flag that we hung today. A friend of mine who's a member of the congregation came in last night from Italy, and she gave me this flag as a gift, which I think I'm going to donate to the church. We'll hang it somewhere in the lounge. This flag was flying outside of the American embassy in Rome. I mean, whoa. I would like to introduce Martha Hickson. She's our special speaker today. And just as a brief introduction, Martha is a high school librarian who found herself targeted during heated public debates over LGBTQ books that some of the parents insisted be removed from the shelves. For her fight against censorship, Martha, who holds both a master's degree from the School of Communication and Information, abbreviated as SC&I, and an undergraduate degree in English from Rutgers College, received the 2022 Lemony Snicker Prize, sponsored by Daniel Hanlon, who under the name Lemony Snicker wrote the popular children's books, A Series of Unfortunate Events. Actually, I have a video of them, a movie that was made from that. Very, very fun kind of movie. The award recognizes librarians who have gone above and beyond the normal requirements of librarianship to face adversity with dignity and honor. Lemony Snicker jury chair Becca Worthington said of Martha, "In the midst of adversity, she has remained a firm advocate for First Amendment rights and a proud defender of her students' rights to read, and that we are thrilled to celebrate her triumphant spirit." Martha Hickson.
Thank you, Judy, for that lovely introduction. My husband, Doug, is here with me today. He's in the back, and he and I are absolutely thrilled and frankly blessed to be here in the midst of this lovely service that you've put together. And Carol and little Linda set me up perfectly. I think we need to take our act on the road, sort of like the Supremes of censorship. We can duke out who's Diana Ross later. Before I get started, I do want to point out that I brought a handout for each of you. If you didn't get it on the way in, make sure you get it on the way out, because I have tons of resources linked for you there. So with that, I want to say good morning and happy Pride. And yeah, happy Pride. And of course, it's no surprise that when you invite a librarian to talk to you, she's going to talk about books. And that's because books connect us to the world, to each other, to new ideas and experiences, and they're a gift that you can enjoy for a lifetime. And I want to try to prove that right now. Think back to when you were a kid. what was a book that you really connected with? One you read over and over, or shared with a friend, or maybe you still have it on your bookshelf? Is there anybody willing to share a title that came to mind? Oh, A Wrinkle in Time. I heard behind me, Dealing with Dragons. Oh, Horton Hears a Who. 1, 2, 3, Infinity. Oh, you guys have such the oldies but goodies. All right, you guys. Oh, one more. Catcher in the Rye. Yeah, my father shared that one with me when I was in about the 7th grade. It definitely made an impact. I became sort of a Salinger completist as a result of that. Well, mine, the first one that I can remember that really stuck with me was Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. Anybody else? Yeah, there we go. Look at all of us old broads raising our hands. Yeah, I can still see that orange paperback in my mind's eye. And starting in about the 4th grade, I must have read it at least a dozen times. Now, picture yourself reading that book that you loved as a kid in the spot where you loved to read. I'm upstairs on my bed in my little pink bedroom, except this time you're told that you're not allowed to read it. You got to give the book back, even if you're in the middle of the story. You can't have it anymore. It's going to be locked up and thrown away. How does that make you feel? Really good or really bad? Yeah, a lot of thumbs down. Giving up Harriet the Spy for me would have been giving up a piece of myself. Students in some parts of our country don't have to imagine that scenario. It's happening right now amid a nationwide wave of book banning. Let's talk about one place as an example, Manatee County, Florida, where only 50% of the students read at grade level. To build reading skills, it's important for classrooms to have libraries of books that kids can turn to when their work is done. So back in September, at the start of the school year, classroom library shelves in Manatee County were jam-packed with appealing books, organized in colorful bins with the topics kids like: dinosaurs, mermaids, puppies, whatever. But by January of this year, the shelves were stripped bare. The books were gone, packed away in moving boxes. What happened? Well, in March 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis signed 3 bills that produced devastating results. Don't Say Gay restricts discussion on sexual orientation and gender identity. Stop Woke limits conversations about racism and sexism in schools and at work. And Transparency allows any resident to challenge a book they consider inappropriate. What is inappropriate content in Florida? Discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation, or any discussion of discrimination based on race, color, sex, or national origin. These laws require that any books in schools must be approved by a certificated professional librarian. Violation results in a 3rd-degree felony. Teachers lose their certification, voting rights, and face 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. Fearful of violating these laws, school administrators in Manatee and other Florida counties directed teachers to pack up classroom libraries for librarian review. The problem is, not every school has a librarian. In Jacksonville, Carrie Clark is one librarian covering 2 schools. She was given 37,000 books to review and approve on top of her regular job. If those books were stacked in a single pile, they would stretch at least 1,541 feet, about 1/3 of a mile, taller than the Empire State Building. At her current rate of 60 books per day, it will take Carrie 2 years to review, approve, or remove that pile of books. And in the meantime, both of those libraries are inaccessible. Students don't have access to books in their classrooms. A kid who finishes work early can't relax with a book. Not even a book from home is permitted. It all adds up to less reading, which is no way to improve those pitiful reading scores. So what kinds of books are citizens labeling inappropriate? You've already heard one this morning. Julian is a Mermaid has been labeled inappropriate. The nature of the complaint, and I quote, "It will produce damaged souls." Did you see any souls being damaged this morning? I think not. Here's another one. When Wilma Rudolph played basketball. It's a picture book biography for ages 6 through 10 about the gold medal winning Olympic sprinter. It describes the obstacles she overcame as a child. It was challenged in Escambia County, Florida. Why? Because of this spread, which talks about the segregation and discrimination Wilma experienced as a child. Now, learning about the history of segregation could, and I would argue should, make people feel bad, or as it's called in the Stop Woke Act, guilt or anguish. So it was removed for review. The person who requested that removal is Vicki Baggett, a high school English teacher. She made that request by filling out a form on which she wrote 13 words. 13 words that caused the book to be pulled because, in Vicki's opinion, the purpose of this book is race baiting. In an interview, Vicki, who is a member of the Daughters of the Confederacy, said the book was accurate, but would make white students feel uncomfortable because they are being white shamed. She has done this to nearly 150 books. If Vicki got her hands on Harriet the Spy, it could be a goner too. It's got loads of inappropriate material, lying, cursing, talking back, disrespectful to parents, a tomboy character who dresses like a boy, and it was written by a gay author. Most of those are actual complaints that were leveled against Harriet the Spy when it was challenged in Xenia, Ohio in 1983. Clearly, we haven't made much progress in 40 years. Florida isn't the only place where we're seeing mass challenges to books. Let's go now to McKinney, Texas, a district with 31 schools. In February of last year, one couple, Paul and Rachel Elliott, submitted 282 book challenges in a single day. That's more than the entire state of Texas had ever had in a whole year. They said the books lacked educational merit, and they copied and pasted the same complaint on every one of those 282 forms. Ready? Here it comes. Contains one or more of the following: Marxism, incest, sexual explicit material in written form and or visual pictures, pornography, CRT, immoral activities, rebellious against parents, and the material contradicts the student handbook. Those are not sincere concerns based on reading a book. It's junk mail, or as one observer called it, paper terrorism. These widespread attacks on books and libraries have been happening all over the country since September 2021. They are sparked by radical right-wing groups such as Moms for Liberty and No Left Turn in Education, which have just been added to the Southern Poverty Law Center's watch list of anti-government extremist groups. Both are active here in New Jersey. They are just two of an estimated 50 groups identified by authors advocacy organization PEN America as newly operating since 2021 under the banner of parents' rights. Their goal is to restrict school materials and library collections to only the topics, authors, and content that match their narrow worldview. In the process, they are trampling on the First Amendment rights of children, parents, and families who experience the world differently. The manufactured outrage produced by these crisis actors has generated unprecedented levels of book challenges in the United States. Last year, the American Library Association recorded nearly 1,300 demands to censor library materials. That is the highest number of challenges since the ALA began compiling data in the year 2000. It nearly doubles the challenges reported in 2021, and it's a 700% increase over the challenges reported in 2020. Those 1,300 attempts targeted nearly 2,600 unique titles, which is another all-time record, a 38% increase over the number of titles targeted in 2021, and a 1,000% increase over 2020. 51% of last year's challenges targeted books and materials in schools, 48% in public libraries. 90% of the challenges attempted to remove multiple books, with 40% targeting more than 100 books at a time. The books targeted are primarily stories of people of color or members of the LGBTQ+ community. Apparently, book banners never took this lesson from Harriet the Spy, who said, "There is as many ways to live as there are people on the earth, and I shouldn't go around with blinders, but should see every way I can." Go, Harriet. Harriet's words make me wonder whether she was, in fact, a Unitarian. Because that quote reminds me of your fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which states, "This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers." The extremists aren't stopping at books about marginalized groups either. They're also going after pride flags, canceling author visits, school plays, sex education programs. They're even trying to block schools from providing information about climate change. And in Waukesha, Wisconsin, first grade teacher Melissa Temple lost her job because she wanted to include the Miley Cyrus, Dolly Parton song Rainbow Land in the spring concert. Rainbow Land, a song with these lyrics that the school called controversial. Wouldn't it be nice to live in paradise where we're free to be exactly who we are? So what starts with the false frame of critical race theory or no porn in schools has quickly become an attempt to enforce conservative orthodoxy over all topics. I'm sad to report that New Jersey has not been spared by this wave of censorship. 11 of our 21 counties have experienced book challenges, including Hunterdon County, where I work. On September 28th, 2021, a small group of parents ambushed the North Hunterdon Voorhees board meeting to complain about two books, Lawn Boy, a novel by Jonathan Evison, and Genderqueer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe. They labeled both pornographic and obscene. They complained about Banned Books Week, the annual celebration of the right to read, and the books that were on display in the library. And they called me, by name, a pedophile, pornographer, and groomer of children, leveling the same accusation against the board. In the following days, the parents filed challenges to a total of 5 books, all with LGBTQ+ themes, adding to the pile Fun Home by Alison Bechtel, This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, and All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. The parents began sending me hate mail and trolling me on social media. That, by the way, continues to this day. My administration was actively accusatory and antagonistic, refusing to refute the false claims. Some of my coworkers shunned me. That too continues to this day. And the parents even attempt to file criminal charges with the Hunterdon County prosecutor and the Clinton Township Police Department. The district formed a reconsideration committee to evaluate the books, and I began enlisting support from the community, so that by the October board meeting, a huge crowd of nearly 400 supporters of the right to read stood up against roughly, 30 book banners. The most effective speakers by far were our students. They were passionate, persuasive, eloquent models for public discourse, but they had to withstand the taunts and jeers of extremists holding placards proclaiming their Christianity. Months went by with no information from the reconsideration committee until the end of January 2022, when we learned that the committee recommended keeping 4 books, but removing This Book is Gay. That decision was posted on a Friday night, 4 days before the scheduled meeting, when the board would vote on a resolution to ban the book. I spent that weekend rounding up speakers for a Hail Mary pass. And during the Tuesday board meeting, students, parents, alumni, community members, and librarians, including this one, begged the board to retain the book. When it came time for the vote, the board rejected its committee's recommendation and decided to keep This Book is Gay. We won. Thank you. And I'm happy to report that all of those books remain in the library to this day. Now, there is no way I could have fought and won that battle on my own. The key to that success was community involvement from people just like you. That's why I spent the last 22 months traveling around the state and zooming around the country, talking to people about the dangers of censorship and asking for help. I'd like to make that same request of you. Language in your Unitarian principles aligns with the right to read. Dignity, justice, equity, compassion, search for truth and meaning, right of the conscience, use of the democratic process, and liberty and justice for all. You are my people. If you see the connection as I do, I invite you to join me in this fight by doing a few simple things. First, fight disinformation. Much of the book banning activity we have seen is based on disinformation, intentionally spread for political gain. Don't be involved in passing that along. Your digital handout, this guy, has a link in the green balloon to the strategy, the same strategy that I teach my students. It's called the SIFT strategy, just like sifting flour. When you encounter information, stop, investigate the source, find better coverage from a source you know and trust, and trace the claims back to their original context. Next, get involved and take action. Show up with friends and speak up. Go to Board of Education meetings. Support library programs, especially those related to marginalized groups. Post your support for intellectual freedom on social media, and most importantly, vote, especially for mainstream Board of Education candidates. You won't be alone. A June 2nd Ipsos poll found that 2/3 of Americans oppose state lawmakers or school boards banning books. And a 2022 ALA survey found that a large majorities on both sides of the political aisle are against book banning. The simplest thing you can do, even right now, I don't mind. If you have a smartphone, join Unite Against Book Bans at uniteagainstbookbans.org. It's a national initiative to fight censorship. Its partners include the ALA, GLAAD, the National Book Foundation, and People for the American Way. At its website, uniteagainstbookbans.org, you'll find an online toolkit with talking points, graphics, and even more ideas for taking action. I'm going to say it one more time because I see a phone coming out, uniteagainstbookbans.org. So now you know, book challenges are at an all-time high in the US, primarily against BIPOC and LGBTQ+ topics. Librarians and educators are being attacked. You can help by stopping the spread of disinformation, joining Unite Against Book Bans, and using the tools in your online handout. So I'm asking you today to make a plan for what you're going to do. You don't have to do everything, but you've got to do something. Because without you, without me, without all of us together, hate wins. And if you don't believe me, take it from my pal Harriet, who said, "It won't do you a bit of good to know everything if you don't do anything with it." Thank you very much.
As we close our service today, I'd like to thank Martha and Dr. Bellfire and Asher, especially Asher. And our benediction today comes from the writer Cricket Hall. May the drag stage rise to meet you. May the world rise to accept and embrace you. May the rainbow of love enfold you. May your fluidity never be hindered. May your pronouns always be supported and your dead name forgotten. May those you invite into your life remain loyal. May your chosen family lift you up and catch you when you need it. May you be able to catch others when they need it. May you remember sensitivity is not a weakness, but instead a great strength welling up inside you. And until we meet again, may you remember that you are loved and you are divine.